My name is Sam Royapa. I'm the Director of Connectional Ministries here in Wisconsin. I bring greetings from our Bishop, Bishop Jung, the Cabinet, and the Program and Arrangement Committee. Thank you all for being here for the pre-conference briefing for 2019 Annual Conference via webinar. I want to thank all the circuit leaders for their willingness to host this event via webinar. A total of 22 circuits are hosting this event in different locations of our state, Tuesday and Thursday of this week. We are very grateful to our communication folks, Roy and Chrissy, for their efforts to make this webinar possible this year. I want to briefly share with you some information and announcements. This year, our annual conference will be at KI Convention Center, Green Bay. KI Convention Center, Green Bay, because of two reasons. Firstly, the West Madison Marriott is going through a major renovation, and they told us in mid-January about their inability to host and accommodate us in June. Secondly, we had already contracted with KI Convention Center, Green Bay, for the future annual conferences, 2020, that is next year, 2021, and 2022. This means we will be meeting at KI Convention Center, Green Bay in the next 4 years, beginning from this year. The 2019 annual conference is significantly and critically an important one because of many reasons. Our church, the United Methodist Church, as we all know, is going through a time of crisis and difficulties because of the outcome of the special general conference in February of this year and the recent decisions of the Judicial Council a couple of weeks ago. Gatherings of lay and clergy are occurring all across the church with discussions, conversations, possibilities, exploring options, and many other interactions. While these gatherings are vital and needed for the future of our church, we need a lot of prayers as well. Praying for our local churches, our annual conference, Wisconsin Annual Conference, our bishop, and our global and connectional church called the United Methodist Church. Please continue to uphold everything in your and our prayers. This is the first time we are hosting the webinar for this purpose, the pre-conference briefing. This is not an interactive webinar, but at the same time, you can hear us, but we cannot hear you. And webinar time is 6 to 8 p.m. Tuesday and Thursday. And in the webinar, we have included the presentation of Bishop's video, inviting lay and clergy members to the annual conference to KI Convention Center the second week in June. Our presentation includes 2020 annual conference budget, then also information about the election process. And we have received 2 petitions that would be forwarded depending upon the action of the annual conference to the general conference in 2020. I want to briefly share with you the annual conference highlights as well. We will have 4 worship services, opening worship service on Friday, and then retirement celebration service on Friday, memorial service on Saturday, and ordination service on Sunday before adjournment. After adjournment. We will also have the Bible study led by Peter Miano on Saturday and Sunday. Another major feature of our conference is election of delegates to 2020 general and jurisdictional conferences. We will also have the 2020 annual conference budget presented, discussed, and approved at the annual conference. You all have received a workbook in which there are 19 action items that are listed, and these action items are to be discussed, deliberated, approved, or disapproved by the annual conference. If you have any question about the presentation that we have done during the webinar pre-conference briefing, you are welcome to contact any of the persons that you see on this slide. Susan Haller is our conference secretary. Anything related to the election process, you may send your question to her. Barbara Dick is the chair of the petition committee. If you have a question related to petitions, the two petitions that are related to the general conference, you may send your question to Barbara Dick. Tamara Wims is our conference treasurer. If you have a question regarding the 2020 annual conference budget, you may send the question to Tamara. If you have any other question about the location, the registration, and other details of the annual conference, which will be at KA Convention Center, you may please forward that question to me, our Director of Connectional Ministries. If you have any question about the lay delegates or lay members to the annual conference or annual conference 101, you may please send that question to Diana Shimko, our conference leader.
My dear sisters and brothers, in just a few short weeks, we will gather together in Green Bay at the KI Convention Center, the June 14 through 17 for the 50th annual conference session. It is my delight to welcome all of you. For 50 years, the faithful laity and clergies and dedicated leaders gathered to lead our annual conference. Thanks for many laborers in our life together. So we needed to make the shift this year to Green Bay because of remodeling at the Marriott in Madison that made it impossible to meet there. We are sorry for the inconvenience, but the trust that we will have a wonderful conference in Packerstown, Green Bay. This year we have changed our theme from the one in ministry to all the world to wilderness. This change reflects the current reality of our worldwide United Methodist churches and the many challenges and opportunities we face as we live together into God's future. So we will travel together through this wilderness time to faithfully witness to the hope and promise that God is with us. Our God is present in our lives all the time. And we will be blessed by Reverend Peter Miano for Bible study and the preachings of my Episcopal colleagues, the Bishop Laurie Hollers from the Iowa Annual Conference, and our own brother, Bishop Don Ott, and the Reverend and Louis Shikun. That worship and study are the cornerstones of the holy conferencing together. And this is also the year we will elect our clergy and laity delegates to the General and Jurisdictional Conferences in 2020. This is a critically important work for our time together. As we prepare for this time of worship, reflection, fellowship, and business, I invite you to read and reflect prayerfully on Philippians chapter 2, verse 1 through 11. May we all adopt the mind of Christ, the gathering in humility, encouragement, compassion, and joy to work out a grand and glorious future together for the Wisconsin Conference. We love our ministry together. Thank you.
Greetings. This is Tamara Wims, your Conference Treasurer and Director of Administration, and I will be presenting on our Wisconsin Annual Conference budget. First, I'd like to talk about 2018. CFA monitors apportionment receipts monthly and started communicating to our boards and agencies back in March and April of 2018, asking that they try their best to reduce their spending and let us know how much they could reduce by, because the cash reserve was low and couldn't sustain another year like 2017, where we had a net loss of about $200,000. In addition to communicating with our boards and agencies, CFA made phone calls and email contacts to churches to encourage giving, but this was not enough to turn things around. Towards the end of July, after CFA reviewed the apportionment receipts for the first half of the year, they determined that apportionment receipts would not be enough to cover budgeted expenses for the year. CFA then reduced the budget for all boards and agencies by 10%. In the month following, there were ministry events canceled, such as the new minister's orientation. There were staff layoffs. We lost 4 staff, and support payments were discontinued. This included the revitalization and critical ministry support that's a part of the Cabinet's budget. At the 2019 annual conference, CFA will be requesting that the body ratify the revised 2018 budget, and that will be done in compliance with the policy that you see on your screen, Policy 10.4.4. On behalf of CFA, I'd like to thank all of our churches that shared in the ministries of our conference and global church by giving last year. In 2018, our churches gave $6.6 million to our connection. This was about $18,000 lower than last year, and we received $814,000 in second mile giving. And as a conference, we were able to pay our 2018 general church apportionments in full. This was done in compliance with Policy 10.3.0 on general conference apportionments, which says that the conference treasurer shall pay general conference apportionments in 12 monthly installments of equal amount on or about the last day of the month. Our Council on Finance and Administration wants to especially recognize the 275 churches who gave 100% of their apportionment covenant. In March, we mailed 100% paid tags to each church, and at annual conference, we will have certificates that were created by the general church, and they will be available at the finance table. So please stop by and see Lisa, our accounting clerk, as she will be distributing them. So as I mentioned, the apportionment receipts were $6.6 million. Looking to the expense side of our budget, the total expenses for 2018 were $6.4 million, leaving us with $144,000 to add to reserves. This addition brings our conference reserves from $298,000 at the end of 2017 to $443,000 at the end of 2018. It's also important to note that according to our conference policy 10.6.0, we have a set cash reserve of 10% of our operating budget, which equals about $660,000 for 2018. So we're still a little ways from reaching our cash reserve goal. The 2020 budget process began with the submission of self-evaluations and plans for ministry from the various conference boards and agencies. Next, CFA met to review what was submitted and determine the bottom line of the budget. Due to the decline in membership and uncertainties of our denomination, the Council decided that the budget should reflect decreases in 2020. Next, the connectional table and then the Cabinet reviewed the budget and provided input for allocating the amount and modifying it so that we were able to fit the bottom line number for the budget. Finally, CFA reviewed the budget once more and approved what appears in your pre-conference workbook, starting on page 19. This budget will be proposed to the annual conference body in June. Please note that details for the budget are available on our conference website at wisconsinumc.org/finance. All throughout the budgeting process, there was discussion about our being uncertain about what will occur with our denomination in the future and how that will affect giving. There continues to be conversation around that topic even through this day, and I'm sure it will continue through annual conference. The total proposed budget for 2020 is $6.3 million. The budgeted net apportionments and expenses are lower than the 2019 amounts by about $424,000. The largest part of our budget is for connectional ministries. This includes our personnel, General Board of Global Ministries, and communications and technology budget. The next largest part of our budget is local congregational development. This is 28%. It includes the cabinet budget for compensation, but also the cost of moving and appointing clergy to our local churches, revitalization support, and critical ministry support for selected churches. Also, as a part of this category, is support for new churches under the direction of the Conference Strategy Board. 25% of our budget is for global connectional ministries. This includes our general and jurisdictional apportionments. 10% of our budget is for clergy and lay leadership. This is primarily the work of the Board of Ordained Ministry as they screen, select, and nurture candidates for ministry, and the work of the Board of Laity, which offers equipping and support for all the laity in our conference. 5% of our budget is for conference support ministries. This includes conference office expenses, the trustees budget, and the conference secretary budget, amongst others. Before you is a list of the members of our Council on Finance and Administration. Clergy and laity from around our annual conference sit on this council and help to make the significant and often difficult decisions regarding our conference's finances. We have been discussing how the recent General Conference decision has and will affect the apportionment receipts. We meet next May 23rd, and will continue to discuss this matter because churches who withhold apportionments significantly impact the ministries in Wisconsin, much more so than the General Conference budget. If you have any questions or suggestions on the budget or the financial direction of the annual conference, you are welcome to contact members of our Council on Finance and Administration. Again, our next meeting is May 23rd. We welcome your input. Finally, I'd like to share that there are resources available on our finance webpage, including videos that can be shared at your council meeting or as a part of your worship service, helpful information on managing local church finances, dates for upcoming trainings, some of which are webinars, and much more. Please use these resources in your church and feel free to contact the Conference Finance Office. We are here to serve and support you. If you have any questions, you can also email Treasurer Office at wisconsinumc.org, and I will be glad to answer any questions that may have come up about this presentation. We are happy to be in service to you, and we thank you and look forward to seeing you at Annual Conference 2019. Blessings.
One of the most exciting and challenging events in the life of the United Methodist Church is the General Conference. The next General Conference is coming soon, and it affects everything we do in the United Methodist Church, from our local congregations to missions and ministries around the world. Much of our time during the 2019 Wisconsin Annual Conference session will be devoted to electing a team of delegates to represent the Wisconsin Annual Conference at the 2020 General Conference. This presentation is designed to help you understand the election process so that you can be a more effective participant in electing delegates. The General Conference of the United Methodist Church meets every 4 years. The next General Conference will be held in Minneapolis, Minnesota from May 5th to 15th in 2020. There will be about 850 delegates there, elected by all of the annual conferences and central conferences worldwide, with equal numbers of lay and clergy delegates. The General Conference is the legislative body of the United Methodist Church. Delegates to the General Conference consider, discuss, and vote on legislation that will set the course of our denomination for the next 4 years. They will make revisions to the Book of Discipline, which is our book of church law that guides our ordering of the ministry and mission of the church. The delegates will consider taking a stance on many current issues that affect the lives of people in our country and around the world. Only the General Conference can make a statement on behalf of the United Methodist Church. It is the one body that speaks for the entire denomination. So the General Conference is extremely important. That's why we need to devote time, energy, and resources during the 2019 Annual Conference session to ensure that the United Methodist people of Wisconsin have an effective voice at the 2020 General Conference session. The Jurisdictional Conference also meets every 4 years following the General Conference session. We are part of the North Central Jurisdictional Conference, which will meet in Fort Wayne, Indiana, from July 18th to 20th in 2020. The primary responsibility of the Jurisdictional Conference is the election of bishops, who lead the church in mission and ministry and in the ordering of our life together. The Jurisdictional Conference also is responsible for the assignment of bishops, realignment of some annual conference boundaries and episcopal areas, and the election of members of general boards and agencies. There will be other business to conduct as well, so the 2020 Jurisdictional Conference will also be an important event in the life of our church. Delegates to the General and Jurisdictional Conferences are elected by each of the annual conferences. Those persons who are elected as delegates to the General Conference also serve as delegates to the Jurisdictional Conference. In addition to them, we will also be electing additional delegates and reserve delegates to the Jurisdictional Conference. Those who are elected are part of the delegation for the entire quadrennium or for 4 years. If a special session of the General or Jurisdictional Conference is called between 2020 and 2024, the persons we elect in 2019 will be the delegates to any special session. Being a delegate is a big task. that requires a lot of hard work and dedication. The General and Jurisdictional Conference delegation, which we elect this year, will meet several times prior to the 2020 General and Jurisdictional Conference sessions. A delegate to General Conference will be expected to give at least 3 weeks of their time during 2020 just to attend the General and Jurisdictional Conference sessions. In addition to that, there will be a large amount of material they will be expected to read and study prior to those conferences. A delegate to the Jurisdictional Conference will be giving at least 1 week of their time to attend the Jurisdictional Conference, and they will likely be expected to attend the General Conference as well, serving as a reserve delegate. In order to be an effective team member, those we elect must be willing to make personal and financial sacrifices and be committed to making the work of the delegation their number one priority for at least the next year. It is sacred work, a major responsibility, and also a privilege to serve the United Methodist people in this way. The number of delegates we elect is determined by a formula established in the discipline and implemented by the Secretary of the General Conference, who notifies each annual conference how many delegates they are to elect for the coming quadrennium. The Wisconsin Annual Conference will again be electing 3 lay and 3 clergy delegates to the 2020 General Conference and 3 additional lay and 3 additional clergy delegates to the 2020 North Central Jurisdictional Conference. In accordance with our Wisconsin Conference policy, we will also be electing 4 lay and 4 clergy reserve delegates to the North Central Jurisdictional Conference. Our vision for 2020 representatives is based on the experience of former delegates, and that is, Wisconsin is served best when its delegation functions as a team, not autonomous members. The Wisconsin Conference looks for our team to provide a witness to the entire denomination that we are committed to holy conferencing or listening, collaborative leadership, and creating a healthy future for our United Methodist Church. The objective is for our delegation to be seen as innovators, visionaries, and leaders committed to reclaiming all that is great about the United Methodist Church. Paragraph 34 through 36 of the Constitution of the United Methodist Church, the Book of Discipline, identify certain requirements for those who can be elected as delegates to the General and Jurisdictional Conferences, as well as who can vote in the election of delegates. Eligibility for election as a delegate has not changed since our last election. Any layperson who is a professing member of a United Methodist congregation in the Wisconsin Annual Conference who has been a member of the UMC for 2 years and an active participant for 4 years is eligible for election as a delegate. Any clergy member of the Wisconsin Annual Conference who is either an elder in full connection or deacon in full connection is eligible for election as a clergy delegate. A number of persons who are interested in serving as delegates to the General and or Jurisdictional Conferences have submitted biographical sketches in which they have shared information about themselves and why they would like to serve. These biographical sketches will be announced in our e-news and posted on our conference website, as well as distributed to you in your conference packet at annual conference this year. It is important to understand that submission of a biographical sketch is not a requirement for election. Any person lay or clergy, who is eligible for election may be elected whether they have submitted a biographical sketch or not. The Constitution of the United Methodist Church, the Book of Discipline, specifies that the lay delegates to the General and Jurisdictional Conference are elected by the lay members of the annual conference. If an alternate lay member is registered as the person representing a local congregation instead of the regularly elected lay member, then that alternate lay member may vote in the election. But you must be a designated lay member to the Wisconsin Annual Conference to vote in the lay delegates for general and jurisdictional conferences. Guests and observers are not eligible to vote. The 2016 Book of Discipline specifies who may vote for the clergy delegates to the General and Jurisdictional Conference. Not every clergy person is eligible to vote in these elections. Those who can vote in the election of General and Jurisdictional Conference delegates are elders and deacons in full connection, who are members of the Wisconsin Annual Conference, associate members of the Wisconsin Annual Conference, provisional members of the Wisconsin Annual Conference who have completed all of their educational requirements, and licensed local pastors who have completed either an Master of Divinity or the basic course of study, and who have served under appointment for 2 consecutive years immediately preceding the election. Clergy people who are not eligible to vote in this election of delegates are provisional members who have not completed their educational requirements, licensed local pastors who have not completed either the MDiv or the course of study, lay preachers, clergy members of other annual conferences or other denominations serving Wisconsin United Methodist Churches. Clergy members of other annual conferences are only eligible to vote in the election of the annual conference where they are members. When you arrive at the 2019 annual conference session at the KA Convention Center in Green Bay, Wisconsin, you will receive a list of clergy ID numbers and a list of laity candidate ID numbers. Every clergy person eligible for election will be assigned an ID number. All laypersons who have submitted a biographical sketch will be assigned an ID number. There will also be a way for laity to vote for write-in candidate who has not yet been assigned an ID number. As we have for the past several general and jurisdictional conference elections, we will vote using forms that can be scanned into a computer. Specific voting instructions will be given during the annual conference session, but there are a few important things to remember. The ballot forms must be marked with the number 2 pencil, and you must vote for the exact number of delegates to be elected on that particular ballot. We may be taking ballots anytime, at any time, often as soon as the results of the previous ballot are available and announced, as you need to be present and ready to vote. And you should listen carefully to the bishop and the conference secretary for instructions about voting on each ballot and for ballot results. We had established a conference practice of taking up to 6 ballots to elect the General Conference delegation. However, a constitutional amendment that was voted on at the 2016 annual conference session has been approved by the Council of Bishops, requiring all delegates be elected by a minimum of a simple majority vote. Therefore, we can no longer allow those who simply receive the most number of votes after 6 rounds of voting to be named as delegates. Everyone elected must obtain a simple majority in order to be a part of our delegation to the general and jurisdictional conferences. Because of this new amendment, our delegation voting time and number of ballots is likely to increase significantly this year, because we are required to continue our voting process until all delegates and reserved delegates have received at least a simple majority vote in order to be elected. Amendment to paragraph 34 in the Constitution of the UMC reads, "Such elections shall include open nominations from the floor by the annual conference, and delegates shall be elected by a minimum of a simple majority of the ballots cast." We follow the same procedure for electing the additional delegates to the jurisdictional conference and for electing reserved delegates, again requiring several ballots in order to fulfill the constitutional requirement of electing all delegates by a simple majority. Specific election instructions will be included in your biographical sketch information and other materials that will be included in your conference packet, shared on our website, and included in our e-news publications prior to the annual conference session. Included in these materials will be the ballots used for voting, as well as action item 20, which will outline the election process for our conference and authorize us to begin the balloting process. The election of delegates to the 2020 General and Jurisdictional Conference is one of the most significant things we will do during the 2019 annual conference session. It can also be very time-consuming, so it is very important that everyone does what they can to facilitate this process. It will be most helpful if you prepare ahead of time, plan to be present and in your seat when the voting takes place, and listen carefully to the instructions that are given when each ballot is taken. We want the election process to go as smoothly and efficiently as possible, and we thank you for your attention, your cooperation, and your prayers.
The following is a brief overview of the Petitions Committee process for submitting General Conference 2020 petitions for annual conference review. In our representative United Methodist system, any member of the church or organization of the church may petition General Conference to revise general church polity or policy or positions on social issues to better reflect the mission of the United Methodist Church. In the Book of Discipline, paragraph 507 governs this process. In the Wisconsin Annual Conference, a committee was formed this year to review petitions. Petitions were submitted via email or in hard copy. They were due March 29th, and we acknowledged receipt of those within 48 hours. Our responsibility as a committee was to prepare the petitions for inclusion in pre-conference packets. The committee members, acting as petitions process advocates, work with petitioners to review and revise them for alignment with the submission guidelines. When we found the final version to be acceptable to all parties, they were submitted to the conference secretary, Susan Haller, for inclusion in pre-conference materials. The due date for that was April 10th. Our goal for these pre-conference briefings is to share the process with participants in preparation for annual conference. The focus here is on the process for petitions, not on their content. At annual conference in June, those submitted petitions will be presented. 2 90-second speeches in favor of concurrence and 2 90-second speeches opposed to concurrence will be invited. The language of the petitions is not open to debate or change at that time. Delegates will then vote on concurrence or non-concurrence for each petition. Concurrence means sending the petition as is with the Wisconsin Annual Conference name. If you do not think a petition is helpful in its current state, whether or not you agree with it, vote for non-concurrence. Petitions with which the annual conference concurs are submitted to General Conference as coming from the Wisconsin Annual Conference. They'll be submitted by the due date for that, which is likely September 18th, 230 days before the beginning of General Conference in 2020. Petitions with which the annual conference does not concur may still be submitted to General Conference by that September date, but will not carry the Wisconsin Annual Conference name. United Methodist individuals or organizations may still submit petitions to General Conference up to September 18, 2019. When they are available, we will let you know where the instructions may be found in PDF format on the umc.org website. While we did not have many petitions to consider this year, we will only have 2 at annual conference to vote on. Please do offer your thanks to the members of the Petitions Committee for their willingness to serve. They are listed here on the slide. Susan Haller and Kevin Rice-Myers served in ex officio capacity. Some committee members are making themselves available to coach petitioners on formatting and editing. If you are interested in that, please contact Barbara Dick at barbara.a.dick@gmail.com. Thank you.